Okay, so I'm filling in for Kristen Benke. She's the economist with the DFO, but she had a meeting in Western Canada the previous days and she couldn't make it, so that's why I'm here. I am definitely not an economist, so you have to bear with me, but I'm gonna go to this presentation if the thing works. Which it doesn't. Okay, well, I guess we'll go Armstrong here. I'm going to talk a little bit about the markets and the structural surplus. You see here this the total requirements of the last 4 years. It grew like year over year. It grows. Part of it is imports, but the majority, of course, is domestic production. And you'll see that the butter stocks went down in the last 4 years. And basically because the production declined somewhat, and apparently the market needs more milk, but we've been able to supply the market through the butter stocks that we had in the last 4 years. The first 4 years of the dairy year look a little bit more positive. Here we have the P10 quota. The blue line is the past year, and the black line is the year before. You see the variations from month to month. It's quite a bit. Overall, though, it's the last year compared to the year before, there was an increase of 1.3%. That's not necessarily quota, but was total production. Here's an import summary from January to December. The gray bar, that is the last one from the last year. You see that it increased year over year. This should end in 2026 because the trade deals that were made in the last couple of years, they all come to, they're still increasing, but at 2026 it should level off unless they make a new trade deal. You also see that it peaked in June and November. So some of the tariff rate quotas for the imports are based on the dairy year, which ends in July, or on the calendar year, which ends in December. So that's why it kind of peaked there in June and November. Here are the growth trends in butterfat. The majority of our market is and our income comes from fluid milk and from cheese in class 1 and 3. You see there's a slight increase in those two classes. There's a bigger increase in yogurt and ice cream, however that's relatively small percentage of our total production, but the biggest increase is in further processing. Class 5, and that is partly why we have such a structural surplus that is growing year over year. Here's the quota forecast from now on until 2034-35. You'll see that there's steady growth in butterfat. Most of it is our quota, and the top, the brownish one, that is imports. On the SNF side, the growth is comparatively higher than the butterfat, and that adds to our structural surplus. So the forecast is that by 2034-35, our structural surplus will be quite a bit bigger. It goes like 4 or 5, 2.5% year over year. So here's the forecast for the structural surplus in both the P5 and the P10. But if we look at the P10, like it's go at 4 to 5% per year, and at the end there it's and now we're doing 1.7 billion liters of skim milk. That's 33 million liters annually. The solutions for the structural surplus is first of all the reduction of the farm ratio, and another thing is to get more processing capacity. That is limited in the last few years after the CUSMA deal, where there was limited export options, but hopefully we can get some interest from processors. There's some federal government announcement and also some industry programs. The main thing that processors are looking for investment is a guarantee for milk, and of course money. They want money, whether it's from the government or from producer money.
Try the clicker now. Let's see. There you go.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I don't know where we were. Where are we going? Okay, so first of all, the SNF ratio policy. The objectives are to reflect the market revenue for the components and to limit the increase on the surplus SNF and maintain the quality of dairy components. And also it had to be a flexible policy so that we can adjust it and change over time depending on the market situation. So the structure, we have the maximum ratio that is 2.2, and then in it we have excess SNF above that, over the 2.2, there will be no pay. So the SNF between 2 and 2.2 in tier 2, that is the 4A monthly price, and that is from the revenue collected from the protein and lactose. And then the remaining lactose revenue will go to the price in tier 1, which is then 2 or lower, so that it increase the price of the milk in below 2.0. And so that is, or maybe that's the next slide. No. And we can adjust it in a few ways. We can adjust the market ratio, the maximum ratio, and the price of tier 2 components that they are currently paid at the price of class 4A. The way it's going to work with the new policy that was announced this week is that the excess, the tier 2 components, SNF and lactose, they will be paid at 70% of the market ratio, and that is based on an estimate of what it costs to deal with the excess skim. So that's where the 70% comes from. Here you see the provincial SNF ratios. I think Ontario is the green one, kind of always like in the higher range, Ontario and New Brunswick. The first one there, that must have been 2019, is when the 2.3 came into effect. And this is where the 2.25 came into effect. And so you see that the pattern is similar, but there's a little bit of difference between the provinces. So the impact of the change of the ratio is the red line is the 2.2, the green line is 2.25, and the blue line is 2.3. So you'll see that the revenue is increased a little bit for the lower the ratio is, from 1.7 to 1.9. There it's like under the new with the 2.2, it will be slightly higher, and then if you cross the threshold there at 2.2. There's a little bit more of a difference. Before that, it was like there's $0.4 dollar difference in between if you go over the 2.2. So it narrows the gap a little bit between the high SNF and the lower SNF. So this is the market ratio calculation, the total sales in SNF divided by the butterfats of the kilograms of butterfat. Then you got the skim milk export, and then the blend components for animal feed, and then the milk that's receiving special treatments, which is skim milk that's getting dumped, and then the remaining SNF for the Canadian market divided by the butterfats by the kilograms of butterfat. That's how we end up with the market ratio. Here's the evolution of the market ratio over the last 4 years. Right now, we at the P10 level, we ended up at 2.18, and the market ratio is calculated at 1.95. Here's the evolution of world market price for class 4A, and that is what we actually get paid. When we put the first policy in place in 2019, or when we start talking about it in 2017, the world market price was around $1.50 a kilo, and it peaked at $4.50. It went down a little bit since, but it's still considerably higher than it was. So that is almost 3 times higher than when we first started talking about this policy. And that didn't help because the payments, your payment for your kilograms of butterfat were higher if you had a higher protein content. So all the feed advisors like Mario and all that, they did the quick math and said, well, maybe, it should be a little bit higher. But it's really defeated the purpose of the policy, but that was a result of the increase in the world market price of class 4A. That is the objective of the producer payment policy. There again, you'll see that there's less discrepancy between the lower ratio and the higher ratios. And this is the cost of dealing with the surplus SNF. The blue is the cost of disposing it, and the gray is the total price paid to producers. So you'll see that the cost of disposal is slowly going up. So as of August 1st, 2023, the market ratio price for tier 2 will be 70% of the protein is at 4A price, and the lactose and other solids is 70% at 90 cents a kilo. We came up with that 90 cents, so there we take 70% as well. And we will review this annually, depending on where the market goes, the world market price and the demand for SNF. So we changed the market ratio to actually reflect the revenue. The SNF above 2, that will be ended up in tier 2. And the reduction in that market price will then be applied to the milk in tier 1. So here again you see the change in price paid per kilo butterfat from a low ratio starting at 1.7, and then here you got the 2.2 where it started at 2. So there again, the discrepancy between the higher SNF and lower SNF is a little bit less than it used to be. So that's the payment. The ratio is 2. You get full domestic price. If you're between the 2 and 2.2, that is surplus market, and there is where that's considered tier 2. So you get 70% of the SNF and the lactose, and then everything above 2.2, that is there's no payment. That's where it is. So the impact in Ontario, the top one is 1.9 or smaller. The way it is right now, you get paid $20.58 per kilo. Under the new ratio, you will get paid $20.94 per kilo. So there's a difference in 36 cents. And then it kind of diminishes as you go on. And then the ones that are above 2.25, they used to get $21.52, and they are now going to get $20.42. So that's a reduction of 10 cents per kilo. Yeah, we're hoping we're going to get some investment in processing capacity. Like I mentioned before, like it was hard, like after CUSMA, to get investment, especially on the SNF side, and hopefully we can get that going and they can find some markets for that. So the P10 boards, they are working to develop a program to get some processor investment, some incentives to make them invest. And like I mentioned earlier, it's they want milk supply and financial support. On the sustainability side, we've heard a lot about it. DFC announced last year that the net zero by 2050. So that means that as a dairy farm, we have to find a balance. Like we can never get zero emissions, but we can offset that by sequestration. And to get there, we can do as much as possible to reduce the emissions and also to sequester carbon. A few of the things that. A few of the options that we have, I'm not going to spend too much time on it because a lot of it was covered in the Lactanet presentation. Reduce the emissions like feeding, manure management, stuff like that. Renewable energy, solar power, wind power, and of course digester to turn that methane into renewable natural gas. Improve technologies. And then hopefully we can find some partners in sustainability that can help us along. Ontario strategy, a few years ago we established a sustainability committee. We have since done away with it because the DFC took the lead on that and there's no use to duplicate that. There's some representation from all provinces on the DFC. So. Yeah, we support the DFC's national target, and we have to get buy-in, have to establish baselines and tell people how to get there. When the announcement was made last year, it was a little bit, maybe it was a little bit premature. We kind of set the goal, but really didn't know how to get there. So that is something we have to work on as well. And then, of course, when we get there, we have to tell our story to the marketing and make sure that consumers know what we're actually doing. So that is the end of my presentation. I don't know if there's any questions, and maybe Lee might have some questions for me. So, thank you.
When you look at the graph for the dollars per kilogram of fat that we can add to the ratio, why after 2.2 you don't give a penalty? I can't believe that those that have a better price per kilogram of fat are the bad producer, those for whom we have to manage SNF strictly. So why don't give a penalty? The graph is in the wrong side. Those that are above 2 should be higher price, and those after 2.2 should have the lower price. So DFO or P5, do they talk about give a penalty to the bad producer?
Yes, and ideally we should do that. I agree, but it's very hard to develop a formula that we can apply a penalty. So another thing is we don't want to go too drastic. Like there's been a few changes now in the last couple of years, but it's yeah, we have to be a little careful to go too drastic.
Or another question: you will pay for fat and protein under 2. The bonus will be here on fat and protein, but why not only on fat? Because you don't want to deal with the protein, you want fat. So if you want a drastic change, touch my pocket.
No, you're right. But one of the slides mentioned that the integrity of the milk, and if we go too drastic, and they've done that in the Western milk pool, they put 85% of the revenue that came from the butterfat. But then you run the risk that people start to use high amounts of palm fat and stuff like that, and that brings with it a lot of other questions regarding sustainability, high free fatty acids and stuff like that. So we have to find a fine balance, And this is what it is for now. It's not going to change like that forever. Like I mentioned, we're going to review it annually and see where we're going to end up. But that's the reason why we didn't go too extreme. Chris?
Sorry, can we hold questions from the floor until the end? We'll do the bit with Lee, and then we'll get questions from the floor at the end. Okay, please. So I'll let Lee go through the questions.
Can you get the mic?
The committee, and then we'll get questions from the floor after that.
Thanks, Bert. So, as Eric said, regarding to the Milk and Research Committee, we have...
Just for the recording.
We good, Bert? Okay, so in reference to the Milk Marketing and Research Committee, we have taken a lot of concerns and from the membership. So we have Bart here, so we have 5, and after listening to the question, I jotted down just a point here as well. So the first question in regards to the DFO recent policy announcement, please explain the price change and how they will affect producers with an NSF ratio below 2.
Yeah, right.
Sorry.
Yeah, as I showed in the slide, it is basically the discrepancy between the low SNF and the higher SNF. It's a little bit closer, the gap is a little closer than where it was before. It's not a huge difference, but I think we have to take little steps at a time. But I think it is, we're heading in the right direction. Another thing I just want to mention that like the butterfat provincially in the last 6 years, the butterfat came up while the protein came down a little bit. So it is working somewhat, but it is not something that you can change overnight. I mean, that's the way the milk comes out of the cow, and it's hard to change overnight. So it is the difference is not as big as it used to be. We're not quite there yet, but there is an improvement for the lower SNF herds. They have a little bit more revenue than they had before.
Sorry, and the second question that we come up with is that the change has been a long time coming. How flexible will the pricing be adapted to future market changes if there continues to be an excess in NSF, or conversely, if a market for NSF develops?
Thanks. Yeah, like I said, it will be reviewed annually, and it all depends on the market situation, the investment that is going to come forward. If all of a sudden there is a market, like the market is there, but it's like domestically it's a very limited market. So we're depending mostly on export market. A few weeks ago I attended the Future of Food conference. It was hosted by FCC. It was on National Agricultural Day, and it was all about food innovation, and there was one presentation about how we needed more protein and how they were going to raise insects to get protein and all that. And I was thinking to myself, like, we're sitting on mountains of protein, but it's somehow, we just have to get there, that we can find a use for it. And once we have that, yeah, then the whole thing might change, then the whole policy might change. And well, that's one of the reasons we're going to review it annually. But it depends on the market situation and how we can get rid of our protein.
Thank you. And the third question was kind of brought up by Guillaume there. Is any consideration being made to change the 2.0 ratio threshold for the pricing schedule?
Yeah, the short answer for now it's no. But yeah, there again, we will review it and keep adjusting it as necessary. But as I mentioned before, we don't want to go too drastic. We also try to get producers to give a little bit of time. So that's why we made the announcement now and implement it in August. And also the integrity of the milk. You don't want to go too heavy on palm fat. If you want to promote that too much, I think that is that is a slippery slope, and we have to be careful with that as well.
DFC has set a target of being carbon neutral by 2050. The current strategies focus on the industry as a whole. Are there any discussions being had about creating specific targets for individual producers at any point in time?
No individual targets. We have like some DFO research money that was shown in the LACTANET presentation as well. To establish baselines, it's good to know where we are, and then you can see where you're going. But for individual producers, right now, no.
This kind of steps off that next one. The dairy industry has made massive improvements in efficiency over the last 70 years. The carbon footprint of each kilogram of milk produced in 2007 was 37% of the carbon footprint required to produce the same kilogram of milk in 1944. Research has shown the Jersey breed has a unique advantage, which further reduces the carbon footprint of milk produced by cows in this breed. The yield of energy-corrected milk per kilogram of dry matter intake is higher for the Jersey cow, and they require less feed, land, water to produce equivalent cheese yields, potentially reducing the carbon footprint by a further 20%. However, funding for research projects, which include Jersey cows as part of the experimental design, is quite limited. Given the goal of achieving carbon neutral by 2050, does DFO have an appetite to fund further research on the Jersey breed, given the existing data indicates the breed offers better environmental efficiencies?
I think we have to be careful if we single out one breed over another, to do research specific for one breed. Another thing is, like that was shown in the LACTANET presentation as well, that there's really not that big a difference. So I think it is. I think we have to be careful that we pick on one breed and say, you know, look at this and forget about the rest. And so I think the research is being done in general. The way it is right now, most of the research involves Holstein cows. But like as was mentioned, like if there's Jersey farmers here with the automated milking system, they can participate in the research, and I think that way we will eventually get enough data to maybe make a distinction between the Holstein and the Jersey, and maybe different breeds as well. But I don't think that we are gonna spend money on research for one particular breed.
And there's just a few notes being made here during your slide presentation. So first of all, thank you for DFO for finally realizing there's a discrepancy between the current two-tier price and actual market compensation for surplus NSF. That being said, according to your graph on surplus NSF, the structural surplus has been trending upward for several years and is projected to be at 1.7 billion liters by 2035. My question is, given these facts, why is the market ratio of 2 that was set in 2020 not trending down?
Okay, so then can you repeat the last part?
Sure. Sorry. So my question is, given these facts, why is the market ratio of 2 that was set in 2020 not trending down?
It is trending down, but it's slow. It's changes like that. It takes time. The producer mindset. Like, of course, the economics don't help because the world market price was so high. So that didn't help us. That kind of defeated the purpose a little bit of the policy. But yeah, it takes time, and we keep looking at it annually and adjust it if necessary. So I'm not sure if that answered the whole part of it. But.
Okay. Thank you, Bart and DFO, for your representation. I guess at this point, we'll open the floor for any further questions.
Question? Yeah. Chris, I think you had a question.
Obviously, there's still producers producing above the ratio. Are they tracked, and are they doing this month over month? Are they continually producing over the ratio? Is it the same people causing the problem, or is it a variation?
Well, first of all, we're not keeping track of that, but my suspicion is that yes, it would be the same people. Right now, they stand to lose a little bit more on a kilo of butterfat. Is it enough of a discouragement? Maybe not, but it'll help. I know it's not a whole lot, but it will help. But I imagine it'll be the same people, like they have herds that probably have higher protein, or maybe they feed accordingly. On the feeding part, like the way it is priced right now, you may have to look at the economics of it again and see, well, maybe it's not worth it, and so that might help a little bit too.
George, just a quick comment. Like Bart was saying, 36 cents a kilogram of butterfat with his policy change doesn't sound like much, but if you actually do the math, like you multiply 36 cents times 365 days times your quota holdings, it'll sound like a lot more. So it's a pretty good little difference change, price adjustment, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. But that's just comment.
Benjamin.
Thanks.
So for other, like, I don't want to say SNS necessarily a quality issue, but if you're a chronic overshipper of milk, somatic cell, Bacoscan, you'd have somebody come up and say, you have a problem, we find a solution for you, or this is the steps you need to take. Is there anything like that at the board level that they're thinking of talking to producers so that they, I don't want to say they don't have an excuse anymore, but they actually have
Like corrective action plans for people who are continually over 2.2.
Yeah.
A penalty. Yeah. Right now it's not there. It might be in the works, like if we look at it next year or the year after, maybe we can change the pricing so that it's really not attractive to do that, or maybe we can apply an actual penalty. It is hard to formulate it so that there is a penalty, and like I mentioned earlier, like we didn't want to go too drastic, but I won't rule it out in the future that there is either a penalty or if the pricing structure is such that it's just not worth it.
Any other questions? I think I just want to take a moment to clarify the point on the research dollars. I don't think that we're necessarily asking research dollars to be allocated preferentially, but I think that at this point in time, there are no research dollars, and I think that an equitable allocation of research dollars is what we're after. We're not asking for preferential. I think that equitable is something that should possibly be considered by DFO, because, and I've spent some time in research, and I understand the difficulty of incorporating smaller breeds into the experimental design, but I think that it's important, particularly because the Jersey breed is growing due to market signals that DFO is setting for producing less SNF and more butterfat. So I think that that's the underlying point on that, is that it's a growing breed that can help meet the demand for the market conditions, but currently research dollars do not have any stipulation requiring it to go to projects that reflect the breed landscape, and I think that that's something that should be considered. So
Okay.
Just a point of clarification on that.
Yeah, no, that's good, because it was for a little while my understanding that we just fund a project directly related to jerseys. But yeah, like DFO and other provincial boards, they contribute to the lactanet research, which is general, but I think, and you mentioned that the interest in jerseys is growing, so I think there will be jerseys herd involved as well. And hopefully eventually we can see, maybe there is a difference.
But I mean, the people who give the power have the money to say, we'll give you the money if. And I think that's where, as a breed association, we have a personal vested interest to encourage our industry partners to put the asterisk on those dollars that are going into research.
Yeah, no, I see where you're coming from, but yeah, we don't, like DFO doesn't do research itself, like we
No, I
allocate
understand that.
dollars, right? And in this case, it goes to Lectanet and they do the research, or universities, yeah.
For sure.
So we hardly ever are the only ones that get giving the dollars. It's usually in conjunction with others, and so it's hard to make the stipulation.
Tail? Were you?
Oh, yeah, there's like
So Taylor's gonna get a gift basket, and then George, if you want to come up. George, so go ahead.
just before we go for lunch, and then
Well, thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
We have friends for you. We've been